BMW's 2 Series Active Tourer brought front-wheel drive and MPV versatility to the Bavarian maker's lineup. In this slightly revised form, this F45 generation version of this car is a little smarter, safer and more sophisticated, and even better prepared to offer a more premium option to buyers of mid-sized 5-seat people carriers.
At its launch in 2015, the 2 Series Active Tourer crashed straight through all we thought we knew about BMW product planning. It was an MPV people carrier and it was front-driven. Plenty then for the Bavarian traditionalists to get choked up about. As usual though, they've been proved wrong. This F45 series model has sold well, and in mid-2018 the brand significantly improved it, creating the car that we're going to be looking at here. Ours is the third biggest global market for the 2 Series MPV model line, with over 20,000 active Tourers sold here prior to the launch of this slightly facelifted version. As before, this 5-seat design sells alongside a slightly lengthier 7-seat Grand Tourer model, which also benefits from the same package of changes. These include small updates to the engine range, styling tweaks, and perhaps most significantly the addition of a new 7-speed auto gearbox as an option on the majority of models. You can also now have more camera-driven safety kit too. Otherwise, things are much as before, which means a package based around the space-efficient front-driven platform and engine package originally developed for the third-generation Mini hatch. Now, BMW hopes that the result is a technological cut above volume brand offerings in the mid-sized 5-seat MPV class like Renault Scenic, the Volkswagen Golf SV and the Ford C-Max. And that claim is underlined by the continuing availability at the top of the range of an advanced 225X performance model for those who favour petrol-electric plug-in hybrid technology. Most 2 Series Active Tourer buyers, though, prefer to focus on more conventional mainstream petrol and diesel variants like this one, which offer a premium feel rivaled only in a segment by the Mercedes B-Class, the latest third-generation version of which this BMW has to be good enough to beat. Is this car good enough to do that? And can it continue to justify its price premium over mainstream rivals? Let's find out. All kinds of things change when you alter a few fundamentals. BMW's traditional insistence on rear-wheel drive, for example, once that was put aside and front-driven models were added to the company's design remit, new market segments opened up. Take that for MPVs. Now, sure, you can make a rear-driven people carrier, but it'll never be very space efficient. With power scrabbling away at the front, though, the cabin of this 2 Series Active Tourer can be as versatile and practical as it needs to be. But does that compromise the integrity of a proper BMW? Well, perhaps, but in some ways that's a rather simplistic perspective, one assuming that all front-driven cars are dull to drive. Have a go in any current generation Mini and you'll discover that that simply isn't true. All of which, prior to this car's original launch in 2015, prompted BMW's development team to wonder what they could create if they were to put their own spin on Mini underpinnings and Mini engine wear. Using a stretched version of the same UKL Mini platform, they could at last create the space-efficient, front-driven, quality compact 5-seat people carrier that they were sure the market was ready for. So the 2 Series Active Tourer was born. Don't expect it to be particularly Mini-like on the move. MPV buyers don't appreciate road racer reactions, and with that in mind, the Munich engineers intentionally dumbed down the chassis responses a bit. They also paid a lot more attention to suspension feel, although despite that, this Active Tourer still represents a firmer riding choice than many C-Max or Scenic-style buyers in this segment will be used to. If that's an issue for you, then be sure you tick the box for the extra cost adaptive suspension system that allows you to alter the damping settings to suit the road that you're on. Suspension response is one of the things that you can alter through the various modes of the standard drive performance control system, the rocker switch for which you'll find down here by the gear stick. Now, you might be familiar with this kind of thing by now. It's a setup that allows you to tweak the steering, the throttle and the stability control system thresholds depending on the operating mode that you select. Gear change timings too, if, like many 2 Series Active Tourer buyers, you decide against the slick 6-speed stick shifter and order your car with automatic transmission. Ignore drive performance control or select its most relaxed comfort or efficient Eco Pro settings, and the travelling experience in this car, although very comfortable, isn't especially memorable. Push the rocker switch forward into sport though, and the reaction you get immediately feels keener and more alert, although it is unfortunately accompanied by rather artificially heavy steering. Still, the end result delivers a more rewarding driving experience than you might ever have thought a mid-sized MPV could provide. You might reasonably point out that this isn't saying very much, and sure enough, if you switch into this Active Tourer from say BMW's 1 Series or even something more ordinary like a Ford Focus, you'll certainly notice the extra body roll around the bends. Come to this car though from say a directly comparable conventional Scenic or a Scenic-style MPV though, and you might well be pleasantly surprised. Now, so far in this section we haven't talked much about the dynamic differences that mark this facelifted F245 2 Series Active Tourer apart from the original version, and that's because there aren't many. The engine range has a familiar look, but all the units now belong to BMW's 2nd generation Efficient Dynamics family, which primarily means a range of eco tweaks to make them slightly more efficient. In the petrol lineup there's a bit more power too, with increases of up to 7 horsepower and 10 Newton meters more of torque. Otherwise, probably the most notable improvement is the introduction of a new dual clutch 7-speed Steptronic auto gearbox, and that replaces the previous 6-speeder, and that's an option for buyers of the entry-level 3-cylinder petrol and diesel models. We'll start with these base 218i and 216d 1.5 litre variants, primarily because many potential buyers do. Both offer quite an acceptable turn of pace, with the 116 horsepower 216d managing 62 mph in 11.8 seconds on the way to 121 miles an hour, and the 140 horsepower 218i improving that to 9.5 seconds and 127 miles an hour. More importantly, in both cases, there's more refinement than you might expect a 3-cylinder engine to be able to provide. And that's thanks to the addition of a new balancer shaft and a modified drive mechanism. The 1-litre EcoBoost 3-cylinder unit that you get in the rival Ford C-Max seems raucously unrefined in comparison. In this case though, we're trying the variant that tends to account for the majority of sales of this car, the 218D. Under the bonnet here there's a larger, more conventional 4-cylinder 2-litre power plant offering 150 horsepower and around 50% more pulling power than you'll get in the 218i. That doesn't necessarily show up in the standard performance stats. 62 mph takes 9.6 seconds on the way to 130 miles an hour, but you really feel the difference out on the road. This still isn't the most refined small diesel that we've ever driven, either at lower speeds or at tick over, but at a cruise it settles down into a very acceptable cruising thrum. The auto gearbox option with the 218D, we're trying that here, has to be of the older tech torque converter variety to cope with the extra torque. Still, it's slick shifting and it comes with 8 well-judged ratios. This 8-speed auto is mandatory on the 2 most powerful conventional petrol and diesel models, which both offer around 190 horsepower. There's the 220i, which uses the Mini Cooper S Hot Hatches turbo 2-litre unit to make 62 mph in 7.8 seconds on the way to 142 miles an hour. But you're more likely to come across the 220d diesel variant, which is the version that you have to have if you want the option of BMW's xDrive 4-wheel drive system. Now this is a setup that really comes into its own in the winter months, distributing as it can almost 100% of power to either axle, or a mix between both front and rear. Either way, the car will be kept firmly planted through the tightest bends in the foulest weather. The extra xDrive traction fractionally aids performance too. The 0 to 62 miles an hour sprint time improves from the 8.2 seconds showing that you get in the 2-wheel drive 220D to 8 seconds. Actually though, an xDrive 220D isn't your only route to 4x4 traction in an Active Tourer. The most interesting variant in the range, the clever 225xe petrol-electric plug-in hybrid, provides it too, although in a rather different way. This variant mates a 136 horsepower version of the 218i model's 1.5 litre 3-cylinder petrol engine, driving the front wheels with an 88 horsepower electric motor which powers those at the rear and draws its energy from a rechargeable 7.6 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery. Keep that topped up and a 28-mile all-electric driving range is possible, although not if you push the limits of the 78 miles an hour all-electric top speed. 3 extra settings feature in the 225XE's drive performance control system: Max eDrive, which keeps progress all electric, the Auto eDrive setting, which switches between power sources as necessary, and Save Battery, which reserves your all electric battery range until you particularly need it, say in urban motoring at the end of a motorway trip. Now, if you can ignore this focus on frugality and use all of the plug-in hybrid model's performance, then you'll find there's plenty of it thanks to a combined system output of 224 horsepower and 385 newton meters of torque. 62 miles an hour from rest takes just 6.7 seconds, and top speed is 126 miles an hour. Here, though, our focus is on more conventional active tourer motoring, and if that's what you're considering, then do bear in mind that most mainstream variants deliver significantly more power than you'll find in the usual versions of volume brand rivals. But of course, power is nothing without control. Just as well, then, in this BMW, you get that too. We'll let BMW themselves start this off. They claim that the 2 Series Active Tourer combines dynamism, style, elegance and practicality in one cleverly packaged car. That's their perspective. Yours might well be that when it comes to dynamism, style and elegance, other similarly sized models from this Bavarian maker are more desirable. Cars like the 1 Series hatch, the X1 SUV or the 3 Series Touring Estate. Focus on the practicality and packaging elements though, and you'd always choose this 2 Series Active Tourer in preference to any of those cars. As we'll see here, it's more space efficient than any other model BMW makes. Now, that's not a design approach conducive to eye-catching exterior looks, but Chief Stylist Michael DeBona has done his best, and a range of subtle mid-term aesthetic tweaks aim to give this car a bit more school-run pavement presence. Now, the key changes feature here at the front, where there's this taller, wider kidney grille and a cleaner, more sharply styled bumper with a central lower intake, which features this high-gloss black finish. These outer air intakes house revised LED fog lights, and further up, the halogen headlamps feature the signature BMW twin circular arrangement with full LED or adaptive LED lighting available on request. In profile, things are much as before. Here, as we've been saying, our focus is on the 5-seat, 4.35 metre long active tourer model, but for larger families, BMW also offers a 4.57 metre long Grand Tourer body style that uses all the same engineering, but features a 110mm wheelbase increase that allows space for a third row of seats. Either way, if you were going to cover up the badges, you wouldn't necessarily guess this to be a BMW, but begin to examine the details and the Bavarian influences start to shine through. The short overhangs, the wedgy profile, the crisp contours and the smart swage lines all point to this Munich maker. It also seems sportier than you might expect a car of this kind to be, courtesy of things like this steeply raked windscreen and the large wheels, which vary in size between 16 and 19 inches and are now offered in a smarter range of designs. And at the rear, well, we did tell you the changes were subtle. Points to you if you noticed that the exhaust was now larger. It's now got a 90mm cross-section, and you now get twin tailpipes for a 4-cylinder variant like this one, and all variants get a restyled bumper too. Otherwise, the fundamentals here are much the same, and before venturing inside, it is worth recapping what those are. This Active Tourer sits on a lengthened version of the same UKL platform used by the Mini Hatch 5-door, and as such, it's significantly shorter than the 3 Series Touring, yet it can swallow nearly as much luggage. It doesn't seek the kind of SUV-style buyer courted by the X1, yet it offers optional 4-wheel drive, and it sits 10mm higher off the ground. We like the clever little touches too, like these vertical air-deflecting blades that sit on either side of the tailgate glass, and the way that the rear wiper is neatly hidden in the rear spoiler. It's attention to detail of this sort that explains this car's impressively sleek 0.26 CD drag factor. In short, if you attempted to dismiss this as one of BMW's less interesting designs, you might want to think again. We're prepared to bet, though, that what will really sell you this active tourer is the at-the-wheel experience it offers. Now, you could argue that a rival Mercedes B-Class is slightly more avant-garde, but in terms of quality and beautifully appointed ergonomics, you won't find another mid-sized MPV that's better to sit in than this one. The interior architecture is based around this imposing layered dashboard that curves around the cabin in a symmetrical wave, and it's garnished with leather stitching, chromed touches and piano black brightwork. In terms of the driving position, well, it's almost SUV-like. Now, I mentioned earlier that you sat higher than you would be in the brand's X1 crossover model, a full 30 mils higher to be exact, which means that the view out is commanding and makes this a fine urban runabout. Or at least it would be if the large pillars each side of the windscreen didn't slightly restrict your visibility at junctions, although these little front three-quarter windows do help in this regard. There are chunky pillars at the rear too, so it's just as well that BMW fits rear parking sensors as standard. These are issues that you quickly adjust to, though. Certainly easy to get an ideal driving position. There's plenty of a reach and rake adjustment from the smart leather stitch steering wheel, through which you view the usual crystal clear set of BMW dials. These are separated by a trip computer with the usual temperature and fuel consumption info. Not that you'll be looking at the gauges very much if you've opted for the extra cost head-up display that we're trying here. If you're familiar with the original version of this car, you might not notice any particular changes here, but there are a few. Some detail like the restyled auto gear stick, and some actually quite significant. Longer seat cushions that make these front chairs more comfortable over lengthier trips. Plus, there's a fresh upholstery option which uses a combination of cloth and Sensatec man-made leather. Perhaps more importantly, though, there's also the option of replacing the standard 6.5-inch iDrive centre dash screen with this larger 8.8-inch touch-sensitive display, which comes with the extra cost Navigation Plus package. Now, this makes the usual infotainment functionality easier to access, and it also includes a touch-sensitive pad on top of the rotary dial controller that allows you to input addresses using handwriting. We like the simple, intuitive way this preferable upgraded system works, with menus that can be customised to your taste. In its standard form, the monitor's divided into simple connected drive, media radio, navigation and my vehicle segments. The connected drive menu is particularly informative, delivering a range of downloadable apps and access to BMW's suite of online services, which are designed to enhance your journey by sending you up-to-date information while you're at the wheel. Everything from weather and latest news to a rainfall radar and an online search system. Provision for the kind of smartphone mirroring systems that even quite cheap cars now usually provide is disappointing, though. Apple CarPlay, that's only optional, and you have to renew a subscription for that every 3 years, and Android Auto can't be had at all. We should address cabin practicality. This is, after all, an MPV, so tick off a spacious glove box, drawers under the front seats, and decently sized compartmentalised door pockets. Plus, there are a pair of cleverly staggered cup holders here in the centre console. Just behind these lies a large storage bin that you can use to store and charge your phone. There's a USB port provided there for that purpose. Alternatively, you might prefer to stick your handset in this centre stack stowage area above the ventilation controls, or store it properly in the custom-made compartment that's in this ratcheting central armrest. For smaller items, you get a storage cubby by the driver's right knee, and there are also ticket clips on the sun visors. Issues, they're few and far between. The shiny piano black finishing on the centre stack attracts dust, and there's no overhead compartment for your sunglasses, but that's about it. Build quality from the Leipzig factory is exemplary. There's plenty then to disguise the sensible virtues that a car of this kind should have. Now, though, it's time to see if this active tourer model could really cut the mustard in the muddy dog, smelly gym kit and family holiday friendly world of the mid-sized MPV. Could you really practically live with one? Well, in answering that, let's start with a look at the rear part of the cabin. Get yourself comfortable in the back, and the news is largely good, with decent space for 3 fully sized adults, and that's aided by generous headroom and this relatively low centre transmission tunnel. Now, true, you do get a conventional bench rather than the individual removable chairs that you'll find on more mainstream MPV rivals like Renault's Scenic and Citroën C4 Space Tourer, but then we don't think many potential active tourer buyers will be cross-shopping against cars of that kind. Now, usefully, this rear bench does recline, and providing you avoid entry-level trim, it slides too in a 60-40 split over a 150mm range. Move it back to its rearmost position and you'll enjoy impressively generous standards of legroom. Now, this is further aided by scalloped front seat backs and the fact that there's plenty of room beneath these front chairs, so even the largest pair of shoes will be able to slide under. Certainly the tightly drawn roofline and the high size can make the cabin feel a bit enclosed, but the large glass area compensates with an airy feel, and you can add to that with this optional two-part panoramic glass roof. Twin centre vents and a 12-volt socket are provided, but unfortunately not a USB port. Plus you also get seat back nets, decently sized door pockets and a centre armrest with pop-out cup holders. Finally, let's check out the boot. Now, this active tourer model was one of the first family-orientated models to standardise fitment of an electrically powered tailgate. And once that glides up, first impressions are encouraging. There's a low sill, a wide aperture and a decently sized cargo area. Go for the plug-in hybrid 225XE model, and the batteries mounted beneath the boot floor restrict boot space to 400 litres. For ordinary petrol and diesel variants like this one, though, the capacity figure is 468 litres. In BMW terms, that's only about 10% less than you'll get in the X1 or the 3 Series touring model. Should also point out, though, that what's on offer here is slightly further removed from the total capacity served up by the kind of more practically orientated volume brand mid-sized MPV buyer of this car might be considering. Something like a Volkswagen Golf SV, for example, that would give you 490 litres, and the Renault Scenic serves up 506 litres. Forget the comparisons though, what matters is that this luggage bay is big enough to be everyday usable. So bulky items like baby buggies that you might struggle to get into some of BMW's other compact 5-door family cars, say something like the 1 Series, will here fit in quite easily. There are also 6 lashing points in the luggage bay along with bag hooks on either side, plus there's a load net and an elasticated strap to help keep things in place should you get a bit carried away on the journey back from the supermarket. Valuables are better housed in this concealed space below the floor, although if you wisely pay extra for this space over spare wheel, most of that available room will be used up. If you need more room, then your first option is to take advantage of the sliding reclining rear bench functionality and either push the back seat forward or angle it into a more upright position. If that's not enough, then on most models the split folding backrest divides 40-20-40, so the middle part can be flattened if, for example, you want to transport something like a set of skis between a couple of rear seat folk. If you really need to supersize your space, then providing you avoid entry-level trim, the rear bench drops electronically at the touch of a button to create an almost completely flat 1510 litre cargo area. This can be even further extended if you've opted for the extra cost fold flat front passenger seat, and that's available provided you don't have front sport seats fitted. With this in place, your active tourer could swallow items up to 2.4 metres long. Expect to pay somewhere in the £25,000 to £35,000 bracket for your 2 Series active tourer, depending on the spec and model you choose. Things kick off with the 3-cylinder 1.5 litre 218i and 216D petrol and diesel derivatives. There's a premium of just under £1,000 if you want the diesel. The 4-cylinder models start from around £27,000 with the 218D diesel variant that we've opted to try here. Beyond that lies the rare 192 horsepower 220i petrol version, but it's more likely if you have £30,000 or more to spend that you'll be considering the top 220D diesel. Now that's the engine that you'll need if you're after a conventional 2 Series active tourer that's fitted with the brand's X-Drive 4-wheel drive system, and that 4x4 option is available for £1,500 more. Anything but conventional is the most interesting model in the range, the 225XE plug-in petrol-electric hybrid, which mates the 218i model's 1.5 litre petrol engine to an 88 horsepower BMW eDrive electric motor and offers a 28-mile all-electric driving range along with all-wheel drive capability. Now, prices with that derivative start from around £32,000 once you've deducted the £2,500 government grant towards purchase. Like most hybrids, the 225XE comes only with automatic transmission. That's a 6-speed box. Of course, a self-shifter is commonly fitted elsewhere in the range too. The 3-cylinder 218i and 216D variants can be ordered with an optional 7-speed dual-clutch auto for £1,350 more. The 4-cylinder versions, meanwhile, get a more conventional 8-speed torque converter auto. That's offered as an option on this 218D or fitted as standard on the 220i or 220D variants. Enough on the Active Tourer range structure. How did this car fit into the BMW model lineup? Well, let's start by mentioning its design stablemate, the 2 Series Grand Tourer, which offers a lengthier wheelbase and 7-seat capacity at a model-for-model premium that varies between about £1,700 and about £2,000 more, depending on the derivative that you select. There's no plug-in hybrid option in the Grand Tourer lineup, though. What else is comparable in the Munich makers lineup? Well, a 5-door 1 Series would be about £1,500 less, while a comparable X1 SUV would probably be around £1,500 more. A 3 Series Touring Estate with the same engine would be nearly £4,000 more, even though it's hardly any bigger inside and much less versatile. Onto the value proposition against direct MPV rivals from other brands. Now, this car's most obvious competitor is the Mercedes B-Class, and that costs about the same, but it's not as good to drive. Or maybe one of the nicer 5-seat compact MPVs, Volkswagen Golf SV perhaps. Now, that car initially looks cheaper because it offers lower-powered entry-level engines, but if you choose the higher-powered units, which will be necessary to match what's on offer here, and spec that Volkswagen up to this BMW's level, then you'll be looking at paying 2 Series Active Tourer money. Now, we don't think there'll be much cross-shopping with this car against the 3 key mainstream models in the mid-sized 5-seat MPV segment, the Ford C-Max, the Renault Scenic and the Citroën C4 Space Tourer. And that's partly because this BMW's a higher quality proposition, and partly because the mainstream engines offered by those cars are generally lower power than those available in the Active Tourer. If you do want to make a direct comparison with the Ford, with the Renault or the Citroën, then you'll probably be making it against the base 3-cylinder petrol or diesel version of this BMW, in which case the premium for Active Tourer ownership is likely to be around £3,000. So what else could you consider? The kind of conventional Ford Focus or Vauxhall Astra estate that model for model could save you £4,000 to £5,000 depending on the variant you're looking at? Well, to be honest, we don't think so. We'd expect that most likely Active Tourer customers will be looking for something a bit smarter than that. Possibly a Volkswagen Golf estate would be closer to the mark, but again, one of those wouldn't be a lot cheaper once you equalised engine and spec. Ultimately, then, it's probably true to say that there's nothing quite like this car. Now, if you agree and you conclude, having considered all those options, that this is what you want, then you're going to need to know exactly how generous BMW has been with the standard spec. And the answer is that most of the key items are in place. So even at the base SE trim level, you get 16-inch alloy wheels, LED daytime driving lights, front fog lights, an automatic tailgate, park distance control rear parking sensors, heated powered mirrors and heated washer jets, an alarm, a chrome finished exhaust, plus auto headlamps and wipers. Inside there are niceties like 2-zone automatic air conditioning, Comfort Go keyless engine start, a sport multifunction leather trim steering wheel and an extended storage package that includes things like a luggage compartment net to help you make better use of the boot space. Driving stuff includes cruise control with a speed limiter function to preserve your license through roadworks or in urban areas, and the drive performance control system, which via Eco Pro, Comfort and Sport modes allows you to alter the throttle response, the steering feel, and on the auto models, the gear change timings too. You'll want to know about infotainment. All Active Tourer models come with the usual BMW iDrive system that in standard form features a 6.5-inch colour screen, Bluetooth with audio streaming, navigation and a decent quality 6-speaker DAB stereo. Plus you get a full suite of BMW connected drive services, including teleservices and real-time traffic information, along with the brand's suite of online services that give you access to things like news reports, weather forecast and a whole range of BMW apps. In addition, the system will even read out your text messages to you. Talking of being connected, all active Tourer buyers will be offered use of the clever BMW Connected Plus app, which can learn your mobility routines, read your calendar, and even prompt you when to leave for scheduled journeys. It'll get familiar with your most frequently travelled routes and memorise them as future destinations. It even has a share live trip status feature, which allows a driver to share their current location and time of arrival with business partners, friends or family. Plus, the app can do all those things that these remote apps usually tend to do, help you to find the car if you've forgotten where you parked it, and it can remotely lock or unlock the doors. All of that comes with standard SE spec, and unfortunately you do have to pay extra for the 40-20-40 split sliding rear bench with its electrical retraction mechanism, but that does feature as standard, providing you choose one of the other trim level options. There are 3 in the standard range: Sport, Luxury and M Sport. The Sport and Luxury variants come with larger 17-inch wheels, ambient lighting and contrast fascia stitching, with the Sport featuring sport seats and the Luxury giving you leather upholstery and extra chrome trim. If you can afford more, M Sport spec gives you a set of 18-inch M double spoke wheels, lowered M Sport suspension and M aerodynamic body styling with high gloss shadowline trim. Inside there are branded leather seats with contrast stitching and anthracite headlining and M Sport door sill finishes. On to options, and let's start with the 2 extra cost packs that 2 Series Active Tourer buyers most commonly consider. The Comfort Pack, which gives you steering wheel heating plus electric adjustability, heating and lumbar support for the front seats, and the Vision Pack, which gives you LED headlights, reversing camera and power folding mirrors. You might also want to consider the Tech Pack, and that gives you a head-up display, a wireless phone charging mat, Wi-Fi hotspot preparation and the upgraded Navigation Plus sat-nav system, which gets you a larger 8.8-inch version of the iDrive infotainment screen. Bear in mind that most of the pack features we just mentioned can be ordered as individual options if you prefer, but that can start to add up if you're not careful, especially if you also start to include a few extra cost standalone features, things like Apple CarPlay smartphone mirroring, which disappointingly costs extra, and BMW's concierge service, which connects you through to an operator for journeying information. We would also be tempted by things like folding rear tray tables, front seat lumbar support, and the huge 2-part panoramic glass roof that we've been trying here. The folding front passenger seat, that would be nice to have too, although you can't have that if you go for the optional front sport seats. You might also want one of the audio upgrades, the simple BMW Advanced system or the more sophisticated Harman Kardon setup. As for optional driving aids, well, given this car's slightly firm ride, we'd say it's probably worth finding about £400 more for the adaptive suspension package, especially if you happen to have a top model with M Sport suspension, although that lowered setup can be deleted as a no-cost option if you don't want to have to keep your chiropractor on speed dial. Adaptive suspension works through the modes of the drive performance control system, and it allows you to set the ride up to suit the way that you want to drive. Sharper variable sport steering might also be of interest to those who want a bit more response at the wheel. If you think you or your partner might somehow struggle with slotting this compact MPV into tight spaces, then you could consider the Park Assist system, which automatically does that for you. In addition, if you do a lot of highway mileage, then you might want to consider the Active Cruise Control with Stop and Go function package, which automatically regulates your speed on the highway, if necessary, bringing you down to a complete stop and then starting you off again if you come across a tailback. Adaptive LED headlights could also be of interest. As for practical extras, well, many Active Tourer buyers pay extra for comfort access, which allows you to open the tailgate by waving your foot beneath the bumper. Plus, many of them also pay more for roof rails. Those are available with either black or matte aluminium finishes. Other extras that fall into the practical category include a detachable tow bar, bike rack preparation, a larger capacity fuel tank, and BMW's optional Trackstar stolen vehicle tracking system. Popular useful interior options include an auto-dimming rearview mirror, sun protection glass and extended lighting, plus a luggage compartment separating net, and maybe also a ski bag could be useful for the boot. What else? Well, we should also mention that if you don't want to be stuck by the side of the road filling with a tyre mobility kit the next time you have a puncture, you'll have to pay extra for run flat tyres or a space saver spare wheel. And inevitably, if you go for the 225XE plug-in hybrid, there will be a few extra things to budget for. Stuff like a home charging BMW i wall box for your garage, a pay-as-you-go charge now subscription, and rapid charge or fast charge cables, which respectively work with 3-phase or 1-phase public chargers. Onto aesthetics. Now, if you don't want the car's paintwork finished in the standard Alpine white or jet black solid shades, you're going to have to pay more for one of the extra cost metallic colours. Sport trim models can be ordered with black mirror caps too. To complete the effect, there's a bespoke selection of alloy wheels that vary from 16 to 18 inches in size. You want to get the interior look right too. On the more affordable SE and Sport variants, you can add in either real or man-made leather upholstery, and you'll be offered the chance to complete your active tourist cabin with either brushed aluminium, fine line wood or high gloss black. All these packages featuring pearl chrome finishing. Safety is, as you'd expect from BMW, well accounted for, hence this car's full house 5-star Euro NCAP safety rating. You'd expect the basics: twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus front and rear ISOFIX child seat fastenings, and the usual electronic assistance for traction and stability control, primarily DSC Plus stability control and DTC traction control. Plus, there's a performance control system which suppresses understeer in tight turns, which will also see you experience extra traction from an electronic differential lock control system. There's plenty of braking peace of mind too, with the ABS system supplemented by fading compensation, CBC, cornering brake control, and a neat brake drying system that keeps the brake discs free of moisture in wet weather. Panic stops, they're aided by a brake assist system, and they're advertised to following motorists by dynamic brake lights that flash a bright warning. We should mention that all variants get what BMW calls an active guard system, and that's based around the company's city collision mitigation technology. At over 30 miles an hour, the vehicle scans the road ahead for potential accident hazards, and if one's detected, you'll be warned and the brakes will be preconditioned for maximum effectiveness. If, on the other hand, you're travelling at under 30 miles an hour and you're not responding to a detected hazard, then the brakes will automatically be applied, reducing the severity of any resulting accident and hopefully alleviating it altogether. Also standard is the BMW emergency call with teleservices system, which in an accident can automatically alert the emergency services. Now, this system not only gives them your exact GPS location, but it also provides recovery personnel with information on your speed at point of impact, how hard the seat belts were pulled, how many airbags burst, and so on. If you were to have a crash, it would all mean not only that the emergency teams would know exactly where you were, but also that they would arrive on the scene more prepared and ready to get you to safety than they could ever otherwise be, and that's a potentially life-saving difference. Want to go further? Well, a key option is what BMW calls its driving assistant pack, which can be ordered either on its own or as part of an optional driver pack, which also throws in front and rear parking sensors and the Park Assist self-parking system. Either way, the driver assistant pack gives you a whole range of extra camera-based safety features. Forward collision warning and city collision mitigation, develop the capability of that active guard autonomous braking system and tell you if you're getting too close to the car in front. Plus, the pack also includes a preventative pedestrian protection feature, which warns you if someone's just about to step off the pavement in front of you. And that's along with a high beam assistance system, which will automatically dip the headlights for you at night. Lane departure warning, that stops dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway. And a speed limit information setup, which pictures speed signs as you pass them and then displays them for you on the dash. A further Driving Assistant Plus pack gives you two additional features. First, a traffic jam assist feature, which steers and moves the car automatically for you at up to 24 miles an hour in traffic. And second, a cruise control with stop and go function, which on the highway can automatically slow the car to a stop, then when appropriate, return it to cruising speed if you come across a motorway tailback. Where this 2 Series Active Tourer model's mini route really ought to pay off is when it comes to issues of efficient running costs. Sure enough, the 3-cylinder petrol and diesel variants that most customers tend to choose look promisingly affordable to run, according to the latest and more stringent WLTP cycle figures. A base diesel 216D manages 65.7 mpg on the combined cycle and 112 grams per kilometre of CO2. Even if you stick to your planet-friendly principles and choose the alternative base petrol variant, you'll find that the 218i model in question manages 48.7 mpg and 132 grams per kilometre. Either way, there's no penalty if you opt for Steptronic automatic transmission rather than the standard 6-speed manual. And as a result, it's all pretty Supermini-like, which is pleasing from such a relatively spacious family mid-sized MPV. So how is all this possible? Well, slippery aerodynamics certainly help. The sleek 0.26 CD drag factor remains best in class, and it's helped by an integral aero curtain, which uses 2 vertical air inlets in the front bumper to direct the airstream along the front wheels. Lightweight design is also a factor. The bonnet, for example, is made from aluminium and weighs just 8 kilos. That's about 50% less than a conventionally produced component. With this revised model, equally important is the fact that all of the 3 and 4-cylinder engines fitted now belong to the 2nd generation BMW Efficient Dynamics family, and that means that they incorporate the very latest advances in eco-technology in the drive to cut emissions and improve economy. For example, the crankshafts are lighter, and a clever process known as form honing has reduced the frictional losses from the pistons. There's much more too. The petrol engines are now 5% cleaner and more frugal across the board. Why? Well, because they now warm up quicker thanks to a new split cooling system, and the recirculated exhaust gases flow more efficiently thanks to a redesigned cylinder head. The diesel units have also been tinkered with quite a bit in pursuit of greater efficiency. The injection pressure has been raised, there's a redesigned system of exhaust gas circulation, and the engineers have developed special slide bearing technology which allows compacted air in the combustion chambers to be more precisely adjusted to suit load requirements and throttle usage. Plus, all the diesel power plants now feature a particulate filter and an SCR, selective catalytic reduction system. There's also an NOx absorber catalyst too, and that complements the usual use of urea solution, AdBlue, to lower nitrogen oxide levels in the exhaust gases. As you'd expect, all the usual efficient dynamics elements also feature. So we're talking here of things like on-demand use of ancillary units, electric power steering, low rolling resistance tyres, brake energy regeneration, and an auto start-stop system to cut the engine when you don't need it, when you're stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. Plus, we should also mention the way that the new Steptronic auto transmission, which features on the 3-cylinder models, includes a coasting function which disconnects the engine at cruising speeds until you need it. Of course, the driver has to play his or her part, so there's an optimum gear shift indicator on the dash and an Eco Pro mode that you can select in the drive performance control system, which will focus all the car systems on ultimate frugality. The extra economy created in that Eco Pro mode, BMW reckon it'd be up to 20%, is fed back to the driver with in-car displays showing the number of additional miles achieved. And finally, there's an Eco Pro route option in the navigation system, which will plot your journey in the most efficient manner. In the My Vehicle Technology in Action part of the iDrive screen, you can also find a driving style analysis feature which rates your driving based on 2 criteria, anticipation and acceleration. And you'll be able to monitor how far your efforts towards frugality have taken you in a separate efficient dynamics screen, which graphically shows the economy figures that you've achieved. Earlier we mentioned the fuel and CO2 efficiency figures that all this effort is generating when it comes to the 3-cylinder models, but what if you prefer a 4-cylinder active tourer, something with a bit more poke, the 2-litre 150 horsepower 218D diesel that we're trying here, for example? Well, should that be the case, you'll find that running costs will stay very manageable. Well, in this variant anyway, it manages 62.8 mpg on the combined cycle and 119 grams per kilometre of CO2, and again, there's no penalty for choosing auto transmission, even though the gearbox in this case is of the supposedly less efficient torque converter variety. Impressively, the next version up, the 190 horsepower auto-only 220D diesel, manages to do even better, recording 64.2 mpg and 117 grams per kilometre, although those readings fall to 60.1 mpg and 124 grams per kilometre if you opt for that engine with xDrive 4-wheel drive. And for completeness, let's also give you the figures for the rare auto-only 192 horsepower 220i petrol variant. Those are 48.7 mpg and 133 grams per kilometre. If efficiency issues really interest you, though, and you're shopping at the upper end of the Active Tourer range, there's really only one derivative that you'll be really interested in, the clever 225xe petrol-electric plug-in hybrid version. Now, to recap the info that we gave you in our driving experience section, this variant mates the 218i model's 1.5 litre three-cylinder petrol engine, driving the front wheels with an 88 horsepower electric motor, which powers those at the rear and draws energy from a rechargeable 7.6 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery placed beneath the rear seat. You'll need around 2.5 hours to recharge the car from a domestic power socket, but ideally you'd have a BMW iWallbox installed in your garage, and that can knock an hour off that figure, and it can be programmed into off-peak electricity rates. When it's fully charged, the 225xe has an all-electric driving range of up to 28 miles before the little petrol engine cuts in, and that means that short urban trips can be completed with zero local emissions. That's if you select the Max eDrive option from this variant's bespoke drive performance control system, which will keep the car in milk float mode. More typically, though, you'll be using the setup's auto eDrive setting, which switches between power sources as necessary. And there's also a save battery option, and that will reserve your all-electric battery range until you particularly need it, say in urban motoring at the end of a motorway trip. As for the 225xe variant's quoted efficiency figures, well, as with any plug-in hybrid, you'll need to take those with something of a pinch of salt, but for the record, they are quoted at 122.8 mpg and 52 grams per kilometre. But let's get back to the conventional petrol and diesel Active Tourer models that most customers will be choosing. So what else might you need to know about those when it comes to running one? Well, as usual with the BMW, there's a condition-based service indicator on the dash to advise you when your car needs a garage visit, and you can check all of that using menus in the iDrive Centre Dash display, and the car will give you 4 weeks' notice of when a check-up's needed, so you'll have plenty of time to book that. Less familiar to some buyers will be the clever teleservices feature that comes as part of BMW's connected drive services, which you can access through the iDrive infotainment system. Now, via this, before each service appointment's due, your Active Tourer can automatically put in a teleservices call to your nominated BMW service centre, and that's complete with detailed information on vehicle condition. You'll then get a call to arrange a service appointment, and that's something that you will already have budgeted for if, at the point of original purchase, you opted for one of the two fixed cost service inclusive or service inclusive plus packages, which will cover you for 5 years or 50,000 miles. Now, with these, after one-off payment, you have the peace of mind of knowing that all normal work on the car has been paid for during that period, and that includes items like oil, spark plugs and filters. Onto the warranty package, the Bavarian maker offers a warranty that lasts for 3 years, no matter how many miles you complete. As for residual values, well, industry specialists reckon that these will be good enough to offset at least some of the premium that's necessary to own this BMW, rather than a rival volume brand mid-sized MPV model. Think in terms of an Active Tourer retaining between 39 and 48% of its new cost over 3 years and 36,000 miles. Let's finish with insurance, starting with the three-cylinder model ratings, and they see a 218i pitched at Group 15 or 16 and a 216D rated at Group 11 or 12. This four-cylinder 218D is Group 16. Think in terms of a Group 21 or 22 rating if you want either a 220i or 220D variant, and the 225xe plug-in hybrid is rated at Group 22 or 23. Only BMW has ever been able to make a 5-seat mid-sized MPV feel really quite desirable, and it's done so with this car. The Active Tourer was the model that paved the way for a whole series of more efficient, front-driven BMW designs, and it still has plenty to offer if you don't mind paying a little more for a car of this kind. Now, it's true that the changes made to this revised F45 series version aren't especially far-reaching. Still, it says much of the completeness of the original model, that they're enough to keep this car very competitive with the completely redesigned third-generation Mercedes B-Class that it must primarily compete against. Otherwise, the only other alternative is a much frumpier C-Max or Scenic-style mainstream brand mid-sized MPV. Of course, the front-driven layout used here gives this Active Tourer a less driver-orientated feel than you'll find in other BMW models. The brand's traditional buyers may not like that, so it's just as well that this car isn't aimed at them. No, you'll be interested in a 2 Series Active Tourer if your need for practicality is greater than your need for a BMW, but you still rather like one. If that makes sense to you, then this car will too. And in summary, well, it says much that over 80% of the people who choose this car have never purchased a BMW before. Customers who probably never thought they'd be buying from this Munich maker. Now, they won't be getting the ultimate driving machine because that's not what they need. Getting instead what may well be the ultimate small people carrier could, though, suit them very well indeed.